Conversations. My name is Mirka, and I know many of you, but for those of you who have never been to our Community Conversations event, this is a live Zoom meeting organized by the Lead Montessori Initiative, which is meant to support Montessori school leaders, school principals, school founders, administrators, teachers in leading positions. And we have been organizing these community conversations for more than a month now. I think this is our 6th or 7th session. We do it every Thursday at 4 p.m., same time, same place. And we always invite a speaker who can address a topic that we are facing as school leadership. The first half an hour of this session is being recorded and streamed, as we have just mentioned a little while ago. And after the session, it is posted on the Lead Montessori website, so you can view it later at your own time. So if you are interested, you can go and check on our website. It's leadmontessori.com. In the section Lead Montessori Community Conversations, you can actually check all the topics that we have covered before. And what we are doing is we are building a little topical library addressing topics of need that can really support you in your work. Our today's guest is Claudia Hesse. Welcome, Claudia.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
And Claudia currently lives in Switzerland. She and I got to know each other through our mutual friend who is a school leader in Switzerland, and I don't see her here with us today, but this is to say thank you to her because this connection has shown to be a very lively, energetic, and I think fruitful friendship and partnership. Claudia is a business consultant, so she's our first guest who is a non-Montessori speaker. But she has consulted in many Montessori schools, and this is why she is with us today. And we asked her to address the topic of how to keep our parents at our schools aligned. And the reason why we did that was because, as you know, many schools around the globe are closed these days, and some schools are going to have to stay closed maybe until September. And those schools are really facing a very difficult situation, and perhaps alignment of parents to school missions and to what the schools are and what the schools do could be one of the critical decisive moments whether those schools are able to survive until they can still open or not. So I really hope that Claudia has a positive message and that we come out of this energized, refreshed, and trusting that we can do this. And I'm going to give you the word, Claudia, and please share with us what you're bringing to this group today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mirka. I am going to share the screen with you in a moment. Before I do so, though, I'd like to start with a little story. As Mirka said, I have quite a few connections into Montessori schools, and at the very beginning of this COVID-19 crisis, I was speaking to a leader of one of the Montessori schools who was very panicky, right? We were all thrown into the situation, and you as leaders in the school as well. So now suddenly there was like, we can't have the kids anymore. How do we organize our our lessons? We work with the material. How can we do that? We don't do computers, distant learning, and all this. And obviously on top of that, there came the fear. What happens if, right? And that was all consuming. So I didn't only consult schools, I actually helped building up a school. And so that means I was in a school, I saw how the parents interact with the school. And that was eye-opening for me. So this is how I could really understand what is going on here and what is really important, because most of the schools, or all of the schools I work with, are private schools. So it's a very different situation than with a public school. So let me share the screen and jump in. Mirka announced that the topic is how to keep the parents in schools aligned. And so the first thing I did was looking into what are we facing right now from the perspective of the school. And you tell me, or you can tell me if I forgot something. What I found is, and that's an overall topic, it's a huge, massive amount of uncertainty. It's basically so hard to plan. We don't know what's coming. It's unpredictable. Different countries have different measures, and we're living basically on a day-by-day basis, and got to deal with this feeling that this unpredictability really kicks off. That also means, and I believe Mirka said that in the invitation as well, some people might leave, and this is a fact. And I guess it depends very much also if you're running a children's house, or if you're running a school, or if you're running both. What is obligatory in which country? So where can people really take their children out? You know, it's obviously easier in the children's house because a lot of this is not obligatory. So what does that mean for the schools? It could obviously mean a potential instability. And this is exactly what this school leader I talked to was so afraid of. What happens if suddenly 10 children, 20 children go and my costs are still there? So jobs might be at risk. The whole school might actually be at risk. And obviously, as I said before, the distant learning is an additional challenge. How to do that, how to get that all in line. So lots and lots of question marks. So I looked at the parents' side, and ta-da, basically the situation is exactly the same. So they face the same uncertainty, the same unpredictability, maybe financial instability, because some of them might lose a job. They are also facing the additional challenge of the distant learning. Many I spoke to, when I work with individual clients, also in other areas, many of them have children. They talk about the homeschooling, and I can really sense and feel what kind of additional stress that actually puts on them. For the parents, it might be a tad different in terms of a lot of them fear that their children are missing out, depending on which level they're in, which grade they're in. I know Montessori doesn't particularly have grades, but in a lot of schools, obviously there's you know, the limit of, in Switzerland, for example, there's primary schools up to 12, and then often children go into the public school system. And particularly if they're in this area, parents are just afraid that their children are left behind. And for them, planning is hard as well. So, question now is, what does that mean? In the end, it means we're all sitting in the same boat here. So the parents as well as the teachers. So there might be this anxiety coming up. There might be the worries, fear, stress. We just feel not feeling safe. And when I looked at the situation, and I realized basically we're in the same boat. So what can we do here together? Because in the end, it's about a community. So let's jump into what is the solution. And I could keep it very short saying leadership. That is exactly the solution. So what do I mean by that? It's about, when I talk about the definition of leadership, I start at a very different end than most people would do. It's not only about leading others. It's not only about leading the team. It starts with ourselves. It's about leading ourselves in the first place. leading the team, leading the parents. So to create this community, and community is actually a key word, and I'm coming to that in a moment. So let's start with the first step. I just said leadership is about personal leadership. I myself, I'm not just a consultant, I'm what I would call a personal leadership expert. I looked a lot over many years into this topic and came to the conclusion, unless I lead myself, I can't lead anybody. And so what does that mean? If I am clear, if I create clarity for myself as a leader, if I develop trust in myself, and that is the first part of developing trust. If I don't trust myself, how can I create trust with other people? How can I muster up my confidence? And how can I actually tap into my own power? And the good news is we're all incredibly powerful if we are really focusing on ourselves, if we help ourselves in the first step to create this clarity, to develop the trust, and to have the confidence in ourselves that we can figure it out. Now, I heard this from, it was actually an American person who said that. I don't think this word exists, but almost everything is figure-outable. And if we trust ourselves, that we can figure it out. That's the really very first step. Because what in actual fact happens is the more centered and calm and more decisive and confident we are, the more we bring this message across to others. I work with my clients a lot within the, I'm making a jump here now, in the energetic, in the energy area. And it's amazing when we shift something inside of us, how we can influence the people around us, the whole environment. People pick up what's going on around us. And I'm pretty sure you pick that up as well. You know, when you deal with, when you work with the children or you work with the parents, you get the vibes, right? And obviously also we send out the vibes. And depending on what goes on inside of us, we can, well, we basically create a ripple effect. And if we're very conscious and very aware what's going on inside of us, and we can shift it towards the confidence and the trust and the clarity, that will have an amazing effect. So the first step is really to look into ourselves. Let me talk a moment about emotions, because emotions are a key factor here. I was talking about this uncertainty, unpredictability that might create fear. And it might be a real fear or not. I'm talking about this in a second. As a matter of fact, anxiety or fear or whatever it is, all these unwanted emotions with this critical situation now, it creates this negative emotion. So normally when we talk about emotions, we differentiate between negative and positive emotions. So I call them the wanted and the unwanted emotions. Because we quite like the positive ones, you know, what we label with positive, and those like frustration, anxiety, shame, fear, insecurity, those are normally the unwanted ones. And where do they come from, or what kicks in when they come? It's when the unwanted emotions create stress. And stress creates the fight, flight, or freeze response. And that makes it then incredibly difficult to deal with situations constructively. And if we are aware of that, if we know, hey, if I get this emotion here, I do, or my body responds with that, and it's triggered by thoughts, then we can shift that. That was a really fast run through now emotions. If you have any questions on that, please ask later. I'm pretty sure some of you are familiar with this concept, maybe some not. Please ask later, and I continue now. So let's go into tactical measures. I was talking about clarity, and I was talking about is the fear that you might have about your school being in danger of closing, or the existence might be endangered, is that really real? And I advocate very much, and this was actually one of the first things I said to this particular person I talked to, who was a bit panicked about what's going to happen now. I suggested create a foundation for whatever kind of future decisions, and make sure that whatever you feel is based on realities and not on assumptions. So it's incredibly important to have clarity about what is really the financial situation of the organization. So what is the liquidity? What is the cost? Know your break-even point. And what I mean by that is, what is the minimum income that you have to generate to keep the business going, so that you might not create a profit, you can cover your costs though. And particularly know how that translates to how many children do you really require in your school to cover these costs. So what does that do? It literally gives you the security of knowing that is my situation, and as soon as it shifts towards, I don't know, if you know, I require 50 children in my school to keep it running. I might have 70 now. So even if I lose 20, we're still safe, right? So create clarity when it comes to the financial situation. And in the best case, and this is why I call it risk analysis, also know what kind of costs are strictly necessary at this moment in time, and which costs you could potentially cut in case you lose more children than you can afford to lose to run your school in the same way as you do at this moment in time. So you could even do a step-by-step process. I wouldn't necessarily go that far unless it's really, really critical already. So I hope that makes sense for you. So let's jump into a bit of an exercise. I was talking about the powers that we have and that we can activate them, that we can create more confidence. And one of the ways of creating a lot of confidence and power is through language. Words are incredibly powerful. And so there are words in our language that we all use, and I call them gremlins, because what can they do? They can create havoc. When I talked about emotions briefly, I told you that thoughts create emotions, and or language, words create emotions. And that means whatever words we're using, there's an emotion connected with it. And when we communicate with ourselves or with others, we can have a very, very powerful language. We can also call it a positive language, or we can have a language that creates stress, that creates a tight feeling in the chest and in the heart. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples what those words could be. And when you see them here, you say, oh, we all use them. We all use the but, we all use the should and must, need, have to. And particularly the must, need, have to are those kind of words that probably appear in our language at this moment even more, because we're under a lot of stress. So, and the shoulds, you know, we should do this to help the children better, or we should install whatever kind of measure. So let's go through them very quickly. Now I'm trying to keep it within my time. Okay, I'm still good with it. So when we're using the word but, what we do is we cut off the first part of the sentence and it literally crumbles into nothingness. So let's take an example. when we talk to a parent and say, you know what, you're really doing a good job with your child, but I don't want you to teach your child this and this and this at home. What happens? The first part where you brought across the message, hey, you're actually really doing a good job, disappears into nothingness. And what the parent hears is, I don't want you to. And they feel criticized. When we use this, and I call this hero word, and actually for those, you see this little gremlin here flickering up, I just assumed that everybody knows what a gremlin is. Gremlins was actually, it's out of a movie, and those gremlins, and you see the kind of fluffy one, they look very cute and very wonderful, and I believe it was water that was poured on them, and then they created chaos and havoc, and this is why I call them gremlin words. So this but word, the should and must, whatever, is very harmless, and it can still create havoc. This is the connection here, just in case you were wondering. So let's go back to the example. If I take this sentence now and say, dear parent, you're doing a great job, and I want you not to teach this and this. Or in this case, I might even switch it, and I would love if you could. Suddenly the message becomes very, very different. Because we're connecting. So both is possible. You're doing a great job, and I still would like to place my wish here. Huh? Hope that makes sense. Let's switch to the should. Should is a very, very strong word. What we're doing here when we talk to ourselves or to others, we're always telling somebody off, because should means, yeah, it should be there, or you should have done that and you haven't, or I should do it and I don't. So it creates a kind of feeling of guilt. And here, same thing. If we communicate with others or with ourselves, we almost cut off our power or cut off the power of the other person. So if we replace it with could, and I challenge you a bit, just test it out for yourself. Now find a sentence for yourself. And it doesn't have to be school related. It could be something like, I should, or it could actually be situation related, because I'm sure many of you are very, very stressed, and maybe you don't take enough time for self-care. So if you then, for example, might say, I should take more time for myself to recharge my batteries. That's one thing. It's like, oh, I'm not doing it. If you then replace it with could and say, I could take more time to recharge my batteries. Just feel inside. Just feel what's happening here. For me, opportunities open up. Yeah, I could. I have a choice. It's not an obligation anymore. It's my choice, and I'm in power. And so that works with other people very well too. So if I ask a child, you should, hey, you should work in this area, or the parent, you should sit down with your child, or whatever you are, whatever kind of message you're bringing across, or you could. Yeah, it's an option. It's actually a possibility. Yeah, hope that makes sense for you. A big one, the must, need, have to, need to, got to. I found that is valid for every language. I know we've got a lot of people from different countries here. I've worked with these words in 3 languages, in German, in English, and in French, and it works in every language, and I'm very sure it works in others too. So the effect of these words is always the same. So what does it do? It creates pressure, right? It's an obligation. I have to. I need to. And if we switch that to choose, right? Then it becomes a choice. It gives the power back. The power is with you, right? Take it back. And as soon as we're in charge, as soon as we can choose, and I could even say in control, because what you're in control of is you. and what you choose, what you do, what you think, what you feel. Wow, you know, this is when the confidence has the possibility to really boost. And I found then this center starts getting in place, right? This almost, I call it peace of mind and heart. I spoke to somebody yesterday, said, you know, I like the word peace of mind. On the other side, it's not just the mind, it's not just the head, it's the heart as well. So a little exercise for you. Maybe watch your words that you use in verbal communication, in written communication, doesn't really matter. It has a huge effect when we do that with people. So that just, this was the empowerment exercise. So now let's go into leading the parents. So why? I guess we all know that to keep the motivation up. No, we can't have them physically around us anymore. We can't get them together in a room. So how do we keep them close? And this is where the leadership comes in, to keep them close and committed, and to keep or even grow the trust. Because when there is fear, anxiety, and remember the first slides I showed you, we all deal with the same emotions, with the same feelings, the trust can go quickly. And so it's the job of you as leaders of school to keep or even grow the trust. So how does it work? Having a strategy. It sounds simple, and it's actually not that difficult to bring it into the awareness and to realize this is an incredibly important part of running the school at this moment in time. And what is also incredibly important, and I've found that in a lot of conversations, listening to the current issues, it's also important to knowing your boundaries. So what do I mean by that? I told you that I was in a school while it was built up, and I got to know parents I've actually had children in the school, so I was a parent and I was sitting on the school side, so I knew it from both sides. And I also realized that parents can, you know, you have 10 sets of parents and they have 10 different ideas how the school or the lessons and whatever should, and I'm using this word here specifically, should be run. In times of crisis where the communication might suffer, where the anxiety levels rise, they probably increase the pressure on the schools. With the result that it's incredibly important for you as leaders or as whole teams to know what is okay and what is not. So what can I allow? What do I take on board and what not? So become clear about that. That's incredibly important, and the clearer you are, the more confident you can also bring this across. So let's look into a few tactical ways of how you can actually keep the parents close. One of the things every person in this world, and not just parents, you too, require is to be seen, to be heard, and to be listened to. And particularly in these times of crisis now, where the fear bubbles up, it is incredibly important to give parents, I believe, focused time and to connect with them very consciously. And this is not necessarily about taking everything on board they are saying, it's just listening. It's a bit like giving them space to express their fears, to express their concerns. And listening doesn't mean implementing it. It's when they feel heard, when they feel seen, they will be open to suggestions as well. And I can see that and feel that every day when I work with people. So it's not listening, let me talk a second about listening. Listening means really not just shutting up and listening and open the ears. It also means not thinking about how do I respond to that while the other person talks. Because more often than not, it's not about responses. It's really just about listening. And the good news here is also you find out very clearly what drives them, what do they need. It's still on you to decide what you can and are willing to deliver. However, you get the requirements, so it's not hidden somewhere, right? It becomes clear. Again, the word clarity is important. Technical measure number three, three, because we started with the clarity. Creating transparency. I do not only work with schools, I work with organizations in IT, biotech, NGOs, etc. And it doesn't matter what kind of organization it is, and it doesn't matter what the setup is. What I always find is that transparency creates trust. So what does that mean? What is crucial is to communicate on a regular basis. No? First listen, then communicate. Listen, communicate. So it's not a sequential thing. It's always listening in between and then communicate. If we keep people informed, if we keep the parents informed of what is going on, and you determine the detail you would like to disclose, just be honest. Be as transparent as you can be. Then people start developing more trust, because the situation, it's almost like the picture I have in mind here is the new situation meant that everybody is on a kind of a shaky ground, right? We don't know what's happening. And if we give an outlook, if we tell them exactly what is happening, what we're doing, what we're planning as leaders, this increases the possibility of them feeling safe again. So they notice, oh, they have control over things. Oh, they are creative. Oh, they're innovative. Oh, they care about us. And they don't not just care about the children, they care about us as parents as well. So this gives, again, clarity that creates trust and also hope, right? That's incredibly important in these times to create hope. Yeah, it will go on. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. So keeping the parents in a very close loop is incredibly important. And remember the nice gremlin words, don't use them. I could generally say, make an effort of being as positive as you can be without ignoring reality. Because we are in critical times, and yes, there might be some hard truths here. We're not living in a perfect world, and hence it's better to face that than to make it look nicer than it is. And this is why I also recommend, I almost said brutal, clear honesty. The biggest amount is not the right word. The highest level of honesty you can deliver without giving any information away that is confidential, right? If that makes sense. Right, so let's get to the next one. Community. I'm absolutely sure you are all working on this topic. You have this community of parents, kids, team, and why is that so important? Because that creates a feeling of belonging. If I belong somewhere, I am just taken on board exactly as I am. I don't have to cut things off. I don't have to fit in. No, I belong. That's a community. So that also means for the parents then that they can express themselves, even if it might be a critical voice, and it might come. That means they trust each other, and or you all trust each other in this community, and you carry the burden together. So it is not the school, us and them, the parents, it's rather we're all a community, we're all in this together. So there are obviously different ways of creating that, the communication I talked about before. Maybe even get them together virtually. Look, what we're doing here now with this Zoom, there are, I don't know how many people are in there, quite a few though. And so you can do that with the parents. It's not, you know, and if you have too many, just cut them into I don't know, whatever kind of groups that make sense for you as a school. Make them see each other, make them realize we're still here. You know, we're still this community. And then there's a good chance that this really results in trust and, in best case, a commitment, right? So that's what where are we in time-wise? 31 minutes, not too bad. So that's in a nutshell what I planned to give you as really hands-on measures, and what you can really do to keep the parents aligned. And if I summarize that very briefly, after all, it is about leadership, and it starts with yourself. The better you lead yourself, the better you will be able to lead your team, get them all aligned, to get the parents in. And probably the three most important words that do define how to keep the parents aligned are communication, community, and trust. So thank you very much for listening. I'm looking forward to your questions, and more than happy to answer them.